Hello, my name is Joshua Mugabi. I welcome you to Respiration. Bingo. Without wasting any of our time, let's go directly to our quiz. An intermediate product formed during the aerobic respiration of a molecule of glucose. Pyruvic acid loses one molecule of carbon dioxide and two hydrogen atoms to form this compound. It then enters Krebs cycle and reacts with citric acid to form oxaloacetic acid. A. Krebs cycle. B. Lactic acid. C. Acetyl coenzyme A. D. Pyruvic acid. And the answer is C. Acetyl coenzyme A. It is one of the end products of anaerobic respiration, that is fermentation, the other being carbon dioxide. A. Adenine. B. Alcohol. C. NAD. D. Pyruvic acid. And the answer is B. Alcohol. A chemical reaction where heat energy is released from the reactants to the surroundings. For example, respiration. A. Exothermic. B. Glycolysis. C. Oxidation. D. Breathing. And the answer is A. Exothermic. The speed at which energy is released or used, or the speed at which oxygen is used, or the speed at which carbon dioxide is produced. A. Fermentation. B. Glycolysis. C. Oxidation. D. Rate of respiration. And the answer is D. Rate of respiration. Substances that transport hydrogen in biological reactions, bioreduction and oxidation, e.g., NADP in photosynthesis. A. Fermentation. B. Hydrogen carrier. C. Lactic acid. D. Krebs cycle. And the answer is B. Hydrogen carrier. A chemical reaction in which oxygen combines with another substance, or a reaction which involves the removal of hydrogen from compound, or a reaction that involves loss of electrons. A. Exergonic. B. Respiration. C. Oxidation. D. Exothermic. And the answer is oxidation. A compound composed of a molecule of adenine, one of ribose, and 3 phosphate groups. The bonds between the phosphate groups are of high energy bonds. When these bonds are broken, energy is released. It is the source of energy in a cell. It traps and transfers energy from cell activities formed in the mitochondria of a cell during respiration or photosynthesis. A. Aerobic respiration. B. Adenosine triphosphate. C. Anaerobic respiration. D. Adenosine diphosphate. And the answer is B. Adenosine triphosphate. Production of alcohol from starch and sugar contained in grain or fruit. This was probably the first use of biotechnology by human. A. Obligate anaerobes. B. Fermentation. C. Facultative anaerobe. D. Obligate. And the answer is B. Fermentation. The second stage in respiration, involving a complex series of enzyme-controlled reaction, where pyruvic acid, in the presence of oxygen, is broken down to carbon dioxide, water, and ATP. This takes place in the lumen of the mitochondria. A. Electron transport system. B. Fermentation. C. Krebs cycle. D. Glycolysis. And the answer is C. Krebs cycle. Compound containing nitrogen. It is one of the purine nucleotide bases of DNA and RNA. Also is part of the ATP molecule. A. Adenine. B. Cytosine. C. Guanine. D. Thiamine. And the answer is A. Adenine. The controlled release of energy from food within the cell of an organism. It is a 24-hour process controlled by enzymes. It can occur with or without the use of oxygen, also called internal, tissue, or cellular. A. Breathing. B. Glycolysis. C. Respiration. D. Oxidation. And the answer is C. Respiration. Organisms that only survive in absence of oxygen. For example, some bacteria. A. Obligate anaerobes. B. Obligate. C. Obligate aerobe. D. Oxidation. And the answer is A. Obligate anaerobes. Bacteria that can only live with or in the presence of free oxygen from the air. They require oxygen for respiration. A. Obligate anaerobes. B. Obligate. C. Aerobic bacteria. D. Oxidation. And the answer is C. Aerobic bacteria. The physical process of taking in oxygen, inhalation or inspiration, and giving out of carbon dioxide and water vapor to the air, exhalation or expulsion. A. Anaerobic respiration. B. Facultative anaerobe. C. External respiration. D. Aerobic respiration. And the answer is C. External respiration. Chemical reactions that liberate energy. For example, respiration. A. Exergonic. B. Facultative anaerobe. C. Exothermic. D. Obligate anaerobe. And the answer is A. Exergonic. A byproduct of anaerobic respiration in animal cells can be converted back into pyruvic acid and then oxidized in the usual way if oxygen is present, or it may be present to the liver where, in the presence of oxygen, it is converted to glycogen or glucose. Causes cramps in muscles. A. Alcohol. B. Pyruvic acid. C. Lactic acid. D. ATP. The answer is C. Lactic acid. It is formed by the release of energy in a cell from ATP. It is converted back into ATP by the addition of a phosphate group during respiration. A. ADP. B. Alcohol. C. Lactic acid. D. ATP. And the answer is A. ADP. Organisms that only survive in the presence of oxygen. A. Obligate anaerobes. B. Aerobic respiration. C. Obligate aerobe. D. Anaerobic respiration. And the answer is C. Obligate aerobe. An oxidizing and reducing coenzyme used in respiration. It traps and transfers electrons for cell activity. A. Hydrogen carrier. B. NAD. C. ATP. D. ADP. And the answer is B. NAD. The enzyme controls the release of energy from food in a cell in the absence of oxygen. It can be an efficient process. Oxygen may be present but will not be used. A. Aerobic respiration. B. Exergonic. C. Anaerobic respiration. D. Exothermic. And the answer is C. Anaerobic respiration. During photosynthesis and aerobic respiration, a high-energy electron is transferred along a series of chemicals. Each transfer, sufficient energy is lost from the electron to convert ADP into ATP. A. Electron transport system. B. Fermentation. C. Aerobic respiration. D. Glycolysis. And the answer is A. Electron transport system. Organisms that respire with or without oxygen, depending on its availability. A. Obligate aerobe. B. Anaerobic respiration. C. Facultative anaerobe. D. Obligate anaerobe. And the answer is C. Facultative anaerobe. The controlled release of energy from food within a cell using oxygen. The process is controlled by enzymes and is very efficient. A. Aerobic respiration. B. Anaerobic respiration. C. Facultative anaerobe. D. Obligate anaerobe. And the answer is A. Aerobic respiration. Dear friends, thank you very much for participating in Respiration. Please do like, share, and subscribe. Thank you. I'm Joshua Mugabi. Bye-bye for now.